are formed in the wilderness, and not only the wilderness tabernacle, but Solomon's temple as well. Both were laid out in that form of the man. And then you find the children of Israel, known as the bride, were constantly interrelating with this tabernacle, coming in and out, coming in and out. Unity, not. Unity, not. And so it literally is depicting the relationship between the two. And as we began to look at it, we went back to the initial pattern and that scene in Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, where Eve was taken out of the Adam, and Adam makes a statement regarding her that she will be called woman. Why? Because she was taken out of the man. And what I want to do is I want to call your attention now to a couple of phrases in the Hebrew. We'll read this. Lezot yikari ishaki meish luchaka zot. I want you to see the Hebrew words for man and for woman. If you look here, you'll see the word isha, and if you look right here, you'll see meish. Now, ish and isha are the two words for man and woman. Ish is the word for man, isha is the word for woman in Hebrew. Are y'all with me thus far? Now, as we begin to look at it, you'll have to note that they have the same two root letters. You'll note right here in isha, the word for woman, you see the aleph and the sheen. Can y'all see that? The word for man here, ish, you see the aleph and the sheen. They both have the same origin or root word. Well, the word aleph and sheen in Hebrew is ish, which is the word for fire. Did you hear me? And so basically you could say that what has comprised us, what is our makeup, is nothing less than this ish, this word fire here. And now we have to understand the connection between fire and the fact we're created in the image of Yahweh, and we remember that He's referred to throughout the Torah as a consuming fire. And if you see throughout the tabernacle sacrifices, you'll see references to sacrifices made by fire. And we shared last night what followed the children of Israel when they were in the wilderness: a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. Can you see the shadow picture? So every time you look, you see that there's a connection. Do you remember one named Elijah? Do you remember what separates him and Elisha? A chariot of what? Fire. And how's he carried up into the heavens? By a whirlwind. So there's a definite connection to this fire that comprised Adam and Eve, the central makeup of Adam and Eve. Now, as you looked at the two of them, you'll note, hopefully, that their name, the Hebrew words there, let me get back to my notes. Can't hardly see that one sometimes. The other half of their names is taken, the other half of Yahweh's name is comprised of the Vav and He. You see the Yod He in this Hebrew word Ish and Isha. And his tetragrammaton, his name, Yod He Vav He, Yahweh, in Hebrew, is seen in Adam and Eve. What you don't see is the latter half of that, but you do see when you add the name of Messiah, Yeshua, to that, you start to see the combination of all four of the letters. Do y'all see that? And it's not an accident. We shared last night that when you look at the Hebrew letter Yod, it shows masculine gender whenever it's added to a name. And that's the letter that you see in the word Ish for man. And if you see the He added, it shows feminine gender, and that's the letter added to the Isha. And again, you're getting a short course in the Hebrew language. Can y'all hold on a little while? Now, it's not an accident if you go back with me to Exodus chapter 25, that we're going to see some of the very same words that you see here in Genesis chapter 2, verse 22 and 23, in this chapter 25, verse 1. And what you find here is that Yahweh continues to build upon this premise of a tabernacle in the wilderness being laid out in the form of a man, and the purpose of that, so that every time the children of Israel could come together, they would have a pattern in front of them every day on how Israel should interact with the tabernacle. And of course, the tabernacle represents Yahweh, who would be personified, if you will, by Messiah. And so that shadow picture, every day, every time there was an encounter in the tabernacle, it was a shadow picture or rehearsal of how the bride and Messiah should interact. And then, if that wasn't enough, he turns around and takes the union of the husband and wife and put that in front of us every day as a microscopic view, if you will, again, of that relationship of the bride and the tabernacle. Can y'all see that? Well, back here in Exodus chapter 25, verse 1, Yahweh speaks unto Moses, saying, in verse 2, speaking to the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Well, the word offering here is where we get the title of this message, Terumah. Say that with me. Terumah. It's not hard to say. Now, if you look at the word terumah, what you begin to find is that he's hidden some things in the Hebrew language that you cannot see on the surface. I want to look at, well, let's look at the first part of the phrase. Speaking to the children of Israel qualifies who should be hearing this. And a lot of people would say, well, the church has replaced Israel. Not true. If you will study the Hebrew language, you'll find they're one and the same. Because the word Israel in Hebrew, Yisrael, is defined as those that stand upright before him. And that term, Yisrael, is all-inclusive. It means everybody that has the righteousness of Messiah imputed to them, and therefore they can stand in an upright or righteous condition in front of Yahweh. So all of us here would be who he would be speaking to when he says, speak unto the children of Israel. And then he tells them that they may bring me an offering, and he qualifies it. Who's able to bring the offering? And the word offering here, terumah, represents Messiah. And so everybody that's able to handle this offering is qualified by this next phrase, those that give it willingly with their heart. My goodness, isn't that an indictment served against us? Because if we're going to handle Yahweh, we can't do it out of obligation or compulsion. It has to be out of a willing heart. Do y'all see that? Now, as we started looking at it, you'll notice that when Yahweh tells them that they're going to bring these things to build the tabernacle, and of course it's the pattern of the man, his response is to tell them, as you bring this terumah, let me read it for you in Hebrew. The word terumah, Strong's number 8641, terumah. Of course, it's a heave or lifted up offering. The root of it is what we want to focus on. But if you'll notice, at the very front of it is the Hebrew letter tav. And that tav implies in the third person, future tense, you shall. So what I want to focus on here is the root of the word, and it is the word rumah, ta-rumah. And break that down even smaller, you'll see the resh and the mem in the word room. Can you see that? These vowel points were not intended to be there. You had the resh and the mem. And that word means to raise up. Now let's look at the word me'at. Are you with me yet? Have them bring me an offering of every man that giveth willingly of his heart. The word me'at here, if you'll notice, it has the mem on the front of it. And of course that mem means from or out of. But this word here, me'at, is also a preposition that means from or out of, in the vicinity or close to. But I want you to notice the latter two letters, the aleph and tav. You should be familiar with it because we've seen it hundreds of times. The aleph and tav represents the Messiah. In the book of Revelation, when he says, I am the Alpha and Omega, that's the Greek rendering of these Hebrew letters. When he says, I'm the Alpha and Omega, he's literally saying, I'm the aleph and tav. And so now you start making a connection between this heave offering that's going to be raised and lifted up. It has something to do, or its origin here comes from this aleph and tav, this Alpha and Omega, this Messiah person. Now, let's look at the next word in the sentence. It's the word kol, of every man. That word every is the word kol, and that means every and all. And of course, you have the word man here. We just looked at it, and it's the Hebrew word ish. Can y'all see that? If we take these definitions and we pull them out and begin to, what I call, extrapolate them from the deeper understanding, more than what you can see on the surface, it says, have them bring me an offering of every man. If you just looked on the surface, that's all you'd see. But if you look in the Hebrew language, here's what it says. Have them bring an offering to me. And then it says something very peculiar. In the doing of that, that's what's being inferred. You will raise up or build. Isn't that what they're doing? They're being called to give an offering to build the tabernacle. Have them bring an offering to me, and in the process of doing that, you'll raise up or build out of the Aleph and Tav, the Messiah, the whole man, the tabernacle. That's what's said in the Hebrew language. Do you hear what I just said? You realize what Yahweh just told the children of Israel? He's telling them, listen, you're to build a pattern. I'm giving you a blueprint here. And I want you to bring all of these different materials. And as you bring these materials to me in faith, those of you that have a willing heart, what you're literally doing, you are building the man. You're building the Adam. Well, why would they want to build the man, the husband? Because they're the bride. And the bride without the husband or the husband without the bride are incomplete based on what we just saw in the Torah. So the whole purpose of seeing themselves being able to be redeemed would be to have built that man, to build the tabernacle, so that they could have an interaction with him and be one again. Can y'all see that? That's not hard to see. Now, as we continue to look at it, you'll see in chapter 2 of Genesis that the woman was taken out of the man and then brought back to him. Here you see the man being formed. Are y'all seeing this? And then the woman brought back and put in him again. Every time the children of Israel would come to the tabernacle, it was a shadow picture of Eve being put back into Adam. You remember John chapter 20? When Yeshua is executed and his side is pierced and the blood and the water pour out, it's the same shadow picture. You had the same picture of Adam being laid out on the earth. You had Messiah being extended out on the earth. And what's happened? Adam's side was opened up, and so was Messiah's. Eve was taken out of Adam, and so was the church taken out of him. And the whole premise of Yahweh from the beginning was not to leave it that way. Because if you're taken out of him, then we're incomplete. He's half of a whole. That's why, if you go back and look in this Torah portion, there was a requirement to bring a half shekel. Every man, the redemption price was a half shekel. Now we understand that all of us corporately represent the bride, right? Well, if we're required to bring a half shekel, it sounds as if it's half of a whole. Isn't that right? Well, Messiah's the other half shekel, and if you take the two halves and put them together, you have the whole shekel. And so that was the shadow picture that's being given you in this scripture. As we continue to look at it, what you find is that Yahweh's telling them the purpose of it, the design, the building, bringing all of these materials. He gives you the instructions of why he wants that done, and that's in Exodus 25, verse 8. And here's what he says. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. Think about how he just said that. Who is the sanctuary representing? Messiah, the husband. Well, who does he represent? Isn't when Yeshua spoke to Philip and he said, Philip, why are you asking to see the Father? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father, right? And so if you saw Yeshua, you saw Yahweh, the Father. Well, if you saw the tabernacle, which represents Yeshua, then what you saw was Yahweh, a representation in a physical form, right? Well, here you see Father telling them, the reason for bringing all these materials is so that you can make me in the earth. Did you understand that? The purpose of building the sanctuary was so that you could make me in the earth. Do you see what I just told you? And now it adds a little more clarity of why you should be coming to the convocation, the assemblies together as a corporate body. Every time we come together to build this tabernacle, what are we doing? We're making him, we're demonstrating him, we're making him come alive in the earth. It becomes a physical pattern so the rest of the world, all of the enemies of Israel saw them building the tabernacle. They may not have understood it. But I can guarantee you one thing, when the enemies began to come against Israel and Moses said, Arise, O Yah, and let your enemies be scattered. How could he say that if it hadn't been the sanctuary and that Yahweh had been built there? And the rabbis teach that when Moses said that in the spirit realm, that the enemies of